All right, what's up, ladies and gentlemen, to another open live Q&A. My name is Mr. McLogan, and thank you so much for joining me on another Sunday evening so I can go ahead and answer your questions, whatever you guys have going on. I know it's coming into, it is a part of exam season, so there's usually a lot of questions that are coming up around in there. I didn't have any math problems though scheduled for tonight. I just had a busy weekend with the kids and family, so I didn't get any prep work to go over any questions. But if you do have some math questions or anything like that, then you can always go ahead and submit it to brianmclogan.com/Q&A. I'm trying to work in, ladies and gentlemen, another opportunity for me to be able to go live. I think though I might have to do something maybe just a little bit earlier because, I don't know, once it becomes the evenings, even though that's like ideal time for students to be studying and getting ready for the exams, it's just difficult for me because I have 3 young children, and finding that time to be able to get that done is difficult. So we'll see what I have, but I have a lot of content for Algebra 2 and pre-calculus, doing some exam reviews. So I'll have some standalone videos, coming out. But I don't know. It's every single time I'm like, oh, I'm going to go live and whatever else. And then we just get the kids to bed and I am just absolutely exhausted. So I apologize. It's one of those things I really, really want to be able to do. And I think back to when I was a teacher, I used to go live like probably a couple times a week. And it was because I had to make those videos so my students knew what to do on their homework or in their quiz and everything like that. And so I had that like stressor, but I also didn't have any kids. So it was a lot different circumstance than what I am going through now. But if you have any questions, feel free, any kind of math questions, feel free to go to brianmclogan.com/Q&A. And, or if you just have any other questions, feel free to add them into the chat. I'll try to do my best to explain things. And if you have something that maybe I can explain through some math, I'll try to do my best on here. I always like to have questions submitted, so therefore I can put it on my whiteboard and kind of get everything. It's a little bit better, easy to present. But for the sake of this live stream, let's just get right into the questions. Good, Arav, good to have you on in eWeb Gaming. Let's see how this is. Whoa, why does it change up every single time? That's so crazy. I don't want it that big. There you go. I used to watch you when I was struggling in math, grade 9th and 10th. Thanks, man. I'm now studying engineering at one of the hardest universities in Canada. You gave me a good foundation. Well, that's awesome. I'm so happy to be able to hear that. And that's so cool that you were struggling and you were able to embrace some of those struggles, work through them, get the help that you needed at that time. And look at you. You're flourishing now. I think that's awesome. And one thing I want to add on to that, because I think a lot of times students feel like when they struggle in math that it's kind of like it's a prescription. Oh, you're just not good at math, or you're always going to struggle in your mathematics. And I think it's really important. Your comment is very, very important for students to be able to understand that just because you struggle in a chapter, just because you struggle with a teacher or in a certain course, does not mean that you are not capable of being successful in mathematics. So there's going to be easy courses. There's going to be easy chapters. There's going to be easy teachers, right? Keep on putting in the work and hold yourself accountable for doing the best that you can do. And I'm telling you, if you kind of strip away the timeline and just say, I'm always going to put in my best effort, I'm always going to get the help that I need when I need it, you'll be amazed at what you're able to achieve. And yes, there are some people that have some great innate math abilities, and there are some students that struggle, but there's a lot that comes into the experiences that people have and also the work that they put into it. So when you come up to these struggles, embrace them and put forth your best effort. And I'm telling you, you will be surprised on what you're able to achieve. So congrats to you. I think that's awesome. Let me go and get, there we go. Put that back in there. Cool. All right. And, I just got to RF, I got to support you on there. So I so appreciate it because, you're one of those students that, even when I'm going inside, at least you have the notification, you're always going to hop in and say hello. And I really, really appreciate it because I've been going live for a long time and I've had a lot of students that have been on a lot of my live streams before, especially in the early years. And it's always cool to, know when I'm going live that they'll even hop in, even if they can't stay for the whole live stream, but they'll be able to check in. And then, I've been doing this for over 5 years now. And then students go away, right? They have other things, their lives change and blah, blah, blah. And, I've had different moderators been on for these live stream. And, but I never forget those people that always came in, said hello and stuff like that. So I really appreciate you coming in and just, if anything, just saying hello. But you also keep me honest on a lot of my math, which I also very, very much appreciate it. Hey, Science Fair. Good to have you on. Thank you for helping me in grade 9. Well, you are very welcome, Adam. The chosen ones. Hello. Thanks for tutorials. Still helps. So I love it. Some of those videos, 2012, going back to my old nice big baggy t-shirt, teacher dress shirt. Sometimes when I was skinny, sometimes when I was fat, then skinny, then fat again. You guys got to see the whole gambit of my time as a teacher, and still even now, no plans to stop anytime soon. Well, awesome. Good to have you all the way over across the world. I love it. I just watched your quadratics standard to vertex form, and it helped me so much. I love your videos. Well, thank you. So happy to be able to help you out. Where do you teach? Right here. So I used to teach in a high school in Jacksonville, Florida. It was Mandarin High School. And I actually just took my students, or not my students, I just took my daughters over there. I had to get my car fixed, and I was driving by. And if you just look up Mandarin High School, like on Google, like it's a beautiful school. I really, really loved it. Like the first time I visited that school as a potential employer, like, I was going through the interview process, I was just like blown away. I thought it was like one of the more beautiful schools that I'd been in. It's not a private school, it's a public school. But still, compared to like my high school that I went to, it was just a really, really cool school. It has a huge courtyard and it's an outdoor school, very Florida-esque. And, but I wanted my children to kind of see it, and they don't remember me ever being a teacher. I mean, I was teaching when 2 of them, I quit when my 3rd was born, but they were like 3 and 4 years old. So they don't really remember, me being a teacher or like having their dad as a teacher and homework or me grading papers and stuff like that. So we drove by the school and I saw it was open and there was people going inside, and it ended up there was being like a play. So I was like, hey, you guys want to walk in? Well, to give you guys a little bit of a funny story, we weren't planning on going anywhere. So 2 of my kids, one kid had socks on, no shoes, and the other kid had just had her bare feet, no sandals or whatever else, because we were like playing outside in our front yard before. So at first I was like, guys, I can't let you, this is like embarrassing, me walking in with my 3 kids, 2 of them don't even have shoes. But then I was like, whatever, like we're not going inside or doing anything and we're not going to see anybody. Well, of course we see like 3 people that I know, and I had to introduce them to my feral children with no shoes. But they got to run around. They loved it. And they thought that they were very, I wouldn't say blown away, but they were very like in awe of like the school and stuff like that. And it was a cool little moment for me to kind of go back in there and just sit and just have some memories of the school. So, but yeah, I don't teach at that school anymore. I've been teaching. I mostly just create YouTube videos now, going over a lot of the same content that I went as a teacher. My question is, what's so difficult about Calc 2 compared to Calc 1 and 3? What's the best way I can maximize my skill in calculus? Well, I will say, I never taught Calc 2 or Calc 3, and I only took Calc 1 and Calc 2. So I will say one of the biggest issues for students in Calc 1 is just having that foundational knowledge that they need for calculus. And so really knowing like your trig and your algebra too. That's why I would say the majority of students in calculus, they struggle is they just don't have that strong foundation, because in calculus, like we cover a lot of topics, you're moving kind of quick, and it's expected that you understand a lot of the stuff that we talked about with functions and polynomials and trigonometry and stuff like that. And so that's a big pain point for students in calculus. And what I would say from a perspective on Calc 2, this is not from a teacher perspective because I never taught Calc 2, would be the exact same thing from Calc 1. Students still kind of struggle and don't forget a lot of those foundational things. But then also some of the stuff from Calc 1, like if they just in the same respect of knowing some of the basic, derivative rules and integration and some of the things that you need to make sure you know from Calc 1. If you don't have that solid foundation, Calc 2 is just expanding upon that. It's not really much more difficult as far as concept goes, but it's expanding upon the understanding from what you learned within Calc 1. So a lot of students will kind of just go through the motions, go through the routine. They don't really allow things to sink in and really have a firm understanding. And then they kind of get exposed. Caleb, I just want to say thank you. I got out of the military. Well, thank you for your service recently. And I went back to school after years of being out, and you have helped me out so much. And currently in engineering school, I'm doing good. Well, awesome. Keep up the hard work. And I'm so happy to be there for part of your journey. Hey, Tony, good to have you on. Man, there's a lot of people. I guess the YouTube's been shooting it to a lot of people who haven't seen my videos or needed my videos in a long time. So this is good to see. It's good to have some of you guys that have watched my videos in the past to hop on. Man, you've helped me since 7th grade. That's awesome. I can always count on you whenever I'm struggling. I got a question. What should I do if I have a teacher that doesn't really know how to teach? So that's a tough one. And a reason why I say it's a tough one is it's a reality. We're not always going to have the best teachers. And even if we feel like we have a best teacher, like, oh, you're going to take, Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so, they're a great teacher. You're going to love them. And then you just don't connect with them. Right. I mean, there was many times, especially when I was a beginning teacher, I was a horrible teacher. Like I couldn't explain things very, very well. Obviously then I went ahead and, improved my craft. But even in my later years, there would be students that I remember they would want to get on my class. And a lot of times I would not be for it because I knew a lot of students needed to put in the necessary work into my class that they weren't doing. But also a lot of times I'm like, yeah, we're not in sync. And, I think it's okay. We're not all you can't always reach every single student perfectly. Sometimes just personalities and pedagogy is just going to work differently with other teachers. Include teacher-student relationships. But the problem that I have with our current educational model is a lot of times we don't have that option of hey, this teacher's not working for me. Let me just go to the next one, across the room or whatever, or go online and get another teacher from there. Sometimes we are literally stuck with what we have, depending on our school or what course we're taking. So that's tough. I guess the only thing I can really say to you is, one, open up that communication with where you're struggling with that teacher. I remember sometimes students would come to me and say hey, I'm really having a hard time understanding how you're teaching or the way you're improving things. I said, that's fine. Stay after school with me and I'll make sure I can give you some extra time one-on-one and I'll do whatever I can do to be able to help you learn. Okay. So have that open dialogue with the teacher. Let them know that you're not understanding the way how they're approaching things. And even if that doesn't improve the way that they are teaching, it might give you a different perspective of how they're approaching the topic and the course. And that might give you a little bit better understanding how to best work with them. And I don't think it's a horrible thing to have some teacher to have struggles with how people are presenting the information. You have to be able to adapt. Not everybody is going to be like your favorite teacher. And yes, a lot of times by the end of the year, we learn that adapt, and then we look back, we're like, that person wasn't really that bad. I'm not saying that's the case for you because you've already, said they don't know how to teach. So let's just assume that is going to be the case. Okay. Open up communication, definitely number one. Make sure you're having that open dialogue with them. Number two, just hold yourself accountable for the information. And, sometimes it might be finding somebody online. Sometimes it might be getting an extra tutor or finding another teacher. If you can't get another teacher inside your own school, but find somebody that you can connect with that can help you with the learning. Okay. Sometimes that might be even self-learning for some students. So just remember that you are the one that is accountable for your own learning. The teacher is just the person inside the classroom to help guide you through the information. So I don't want you to fault the teacher. You hold yourself accountable for learning the information. But I know it can be tough though when we don't have a teacher that has strong teaching skills, or they do, but maybe we're having a hard time connecting with them. It can be difficult. And I hope that some of the changes that we make in our educational model can help us kind of overcome some of those situations. Cause I just don't see I just don't see why in our day and age, we can't find the optimal learning guide for each and every student. If that's online, if it's a teacher, if it's an online teacher, whatever may be the case, like it's all available. We got to be able to figure a way. Hey, Misha, good to have you on. All right, well, someone just said, this is just funny. I don't know. It wasn't that long ago. The only reason why I laugh is because I guess I forget. Sorry, I'm just looking for this video. Oh, I can't find it. All right. Well, how do you convert from vertex form to factored form? All you simply needed to go. Actually, the student was asking me a different question. So anyways, all you need to go from vertex form to factor form is just simply expand out the binomial. So remember, vertex form has a binomial squared. So just multiply it out, just like any kind of FOIL you have. If you have a coefficient of that, make sure you expand the binomial first, apply distributive property with the coefficient, and then add your constant to your constant. And that's the simple process. Just remember, a binomial squared is always going to produce a perfect square trinomial. So if you're familiar with that, that can make the work even easier for you. I'm not sure on the LXPPL exam from there, but I would say for every single exam that students are always telling me, try to get as many past papers and practice exams as you possibly can, and do as many examples as possible. Like if this was anything like for like an AP Calc, or you're studying for your SAT or ACT, like get as many example problems as possible and try to complete as many of them you can do. It's not fun, it's not exciting, but you're putting yourself in the mindset and getting used to how those types of questions are being asked. And so just the more practice you do, just like anything else, guys, you're just going to be better prepared when it comes time to test time. Yeah, I guess so. It's that good old China head. And it's almost like for any of you that have watched any of my old videos, you might have seen like sometimes I'll come in to a video and my face is all banged up. And that was because on every weekend, usually for the first, I started recording in 2010. So yeah, probably from 2010, 2016, probably I was playing rugby on the weekend. And so I would always have my face would be beat up. There's one video where I come in on crutches. And it was legit. Like I had to get, I can't remember. I think I got stitches on my knee. And I was in the hospital till late on Sunday. And then, but yeah, still showed up. Still showed up on Monday, taught my class on crutches. And, but yeah, that was what rugby did to me. So actually this is something different. This is actually from a home improvement project. I don't think my body could handle me playing rugby right now. I'm trying to get into Calc 1 in college. Well, awesome. Well, put in the work that you need. I don't know if that's an entrance exam or going to be based off your current course that you're taking, but yeah, that's cool. Calculus, I loved taking calculus. I didn't really have as much fun teaching. I mean, I did appreciate teaching calculus in college. I probably could have stayed maybe another year if I was going to be teaching it again. But it wasn't in the cards, and that's okay. But I will say though, from teaching the AP Calc curriculum was okay, going back through the calculus concept, but it was really more of all prep of getting students ready for the AP exam. Yeah, we had time to do some fun things in calculus, but we didn't really have that much time because everything was about the AP exam. Whereas college, I just remember when I was taking it, it was so much looser, and it was just, the professor just got to be able to have so much more fun, with it. There wasn't that pressure and that timeliness of having to get all this information, what's going to be taught. And there wasn't all this drilling that we did. And so I really just appreciated actually taking calculus in college. Jeffrey, Vincente highlights. I'm having trouble in algebra as a 9th grade. I have a full-time math class for a year, and I've had 65, 71, 66 on my 3 midterms. I also finished my 3rd marking period with a 73. What do I do? Okay, here's a couple things. First of all, you need help. Find some help. If it's a tutor, if it's a study group, something else. You need to get that foundation up a little bit more. So whatever that may be, the practice. I remember when I was in college and I failed my first college algebra exam, and I thought I was like going to get an A. I'm like, man, I just took I came from taking pre-calculus and now I'm going to college algebra. And I'm like, oh, I knew everything. I wasn't really paying attention in the course. I mean, I was, but I wasn't really taking it seriously because I thought I was like above me. And then I failed the first test. And I had this like moment where I was like, all right, I don't know everything I think I know. So what I held myself accountable for was understanding all this stuff that I was supposed to know that I actually didn't really know that well. The reason why I bring that up to you is because during your current course, like you want to get better grades than a low C, high D, right? So get some extra help to help you kind of get across the finish line. But number two, I also don't want you to be so hard on yourself. Give yourself a little bit of time. Algebraic processes sometimes really do take just a little bit more maturity for your brain to really kind of have things sink in. So as long as you don't give up on it, and as long as you just don't like, all right, I passed this class, now I'm not going to review this stuff anymore or like care about this, it's going to come back to you. So don't just overlook it and think it was a flash in a pan kind of idea. All right. So once you kind of get through what you need to do right now, you just need to get whatever help that you can possibly get to do what you need to do, because you're in a course that's timely, right? You're going to have exams. You're going to have one more final, right? You just need to get a better grade for GPA's sake. But then after that's done, let's say you settle with the C. Awesome. Move on to the next course. But realize there's a lot of things that you fully didn't understand in your current course. And that's okay though. It's perfectly okay. I don't want you to beat yourself up about that. Just realize, okay, I passed this class, or maybe I barely passed, I got a D, whatever else, and I'm still moving on to the next course. That's fine. I'm going to continue to struggle though, unless I go back and identify some of the problems or areas where I struggled with. So just keep that with you. And that when you move on to next year, don't forget all of the stuff that you previously went through. Like, don't forget some of the struggles that you had. You're going to want to make sure you go back over there and refresh that stuff. And trust me, even after a year has passed, the stuff is going to be a little bit easier for you to be able to understand it. But I'm telling you, if you just kind of overlook it and be like, all right, I got some help. I found a tutor or whatever else. And like, I got a good grade. I'm moving on to the next course. And you don't go back and review where those areas that you struggled with during this current year, it's going to come back up to you again. Okay. So do what you need to do to get by now, but also realize that some of the stuff didn't make sense this year. That's okay. Just don't lose sight of that information. Go back to it another year, because another year of maturity, it can be all the difference for you. I'm homeschooling Algebra 1 because my school won't let me move up. Can I skip Algebra 1 or test out of it in high school? I mean, that's all dependent for your current school that for you having there. And I think it should be possible, to be honest. I mean, in my opinion, just like I was talking about with like teachers and stuff like that. So I would just speak to whatever representative you have for the public school, system, and like your counselor or whatever liaison they have for homeschooling. I'm just not very familiar with it. But we used to in Florida have a way for you to opt out of Algebra 1, or when we had students that came from like a different state and they already had the credits or something, they could still like opt out of it. So there should be, or could be, a way for you to be able to do that. But yeah, I would just speak with them and see what your options are. Maybe you could take the course like online, and while you're also taking like your current geometry or algebra 2 course in the school. Dev Lusario, I got a 5 out of 25 on my circle as I only memorized the first quadrant and could till up to the other 3. Can you guide me on how to fill the rest? Yes, I have a video. On it. I think it's unlisted. Let me see. Yeah. So all you really need to remember, and to knowing the first quadrant, that's it. Like that's actually all I tell my students to know is remember the first quadrant, because all you need to think about is all the other quadrants are just reflections of that first quadrant. Reflected about the y-axis, that means now the x coordinates are going to be negative, right? Or actually, I mean, think about it, it's just all those reflections. But the thing that I want you to think about from there is that just understand also the coordinate points. If it's in quadrant 2, the x coordinate is going to be negative. If it's in quadrant 3, then your x and y coordinates are going to be negative. And if it's in quadrant 4, then obviously the y coordinate is going to be negative, because the first quadrant, all the points are positive. So to give you a quick little idea, like what I do is when you are given an angle and you're looking for what is the point on the unit circle, what I tell my students to do is to find the reference angle. The reference angle is the acute angle between the terminal side and the x-axis. Okay, so sketch the angle on the unit circle, identify what the reference angle is going to be, and that reference angle of your whatever your angle is going to the reference angle is going to give you what the coordinate point would be in the first quadrant, and that means it's just going to be a reflection of that point. So for example, if I had like 4 pi over 3, sketched it, I recognize that that angle is pi over 3 away from the x coordinate. So I go to pi over 3 in my first quadrant. I see that coordinate is going to be 1/2 comma square root of 3 over 2. However, 4 pi over 3 I know is a reflection over that. 4 pi over 3 is also in the fourth quadrant, so therefore I know it's the exact same coordinate points of 1/2 comma square root of 3 over 2, but since it's in the fourth quadrant, it's going to be negative 1/2 negative square root of 3 over 2. So hopefully that, without me actually showing any work, made sense and helped you out. But I'm also going to post a video for you, special at triangles, because I made a video and it's listed as unlisted, or it should be. Oh wait, no, I didn't upload it. Dang it, I have it. I got to upload it, sorry. But either way, let me know if that helped out. How do you read a word problem and convert it to math? So I was thinking about a course that I was going to make all about word problems. And to be honest with you, that'd be the most beneficial way for me to be able to answer this question. But I think there's a couple things you need to understand. One, make sure you read the whole problem. The biggest issue I see with students with word problems is not reading the whole question. Read everything through. Underline, highlight, important parts, whatever else, right? But read the question through and rephrase the question. Make sure you know what is the question asking. How many times we've gone through a word problem, done the math, and then realized that our answer that we did mathematically is actually not solving the word problem. So make sure we rephrase the question. Make sure we identify what we are trying to solve. Then we need to create our variables. We need to define our variables. What is our unknown? What is it we are trying to solve for? Sometimes we're going to have multiple variables. Define what your variables are. Then, based on the problem, you're going to be using some set of questions or relationships based on all that, right? Or some kind of formula that's based on the information. So that's where you're, based on that word problem, try to extract creating an equation with your variables you defined and make sure that kind of aligns with the question of what you're going to be solving for. And a lot of times creating a picture can be helpful as well. But that's a quick little, review on how to approach word problems. But I really, really do want to get that word problem course up and out. I think that'd be helpful for a lot of students. I know. Well, that's usually around typical on my Sunday night, but I appreciate it. Thank you, Intuck. I appreciate that. How do you use fundamental identities to simplify negative sine of x, cosine of negative x, and cosecant of negative x? Okay, so these are going to be your even-odd identities. Remember that the even-odd identities for sine of x is negative sine of x. The even-odd identities for cosine of x, cosine of negative x, is just going to be cosine of x. And cosecant of negative x is also going to be a negative cosecant of x. So Also, I know that sine of x and cosecant are reciprocals of each other, so they're going to multiply to give me 1. It's also a negative times a negative, which is going to be a positive 1. So then I have 1 times cosine of negative x, which using the even odd identities is just going to be a positive cosine of x. So that is actually going to simplify to a cosine of x. How can I start getting better at solving quadratic equations for the PSAT or SAT? Because my Algebra 1 teacher almost skipped the quadratic section. What? That's crazy. We barely did anything for it. So quadratics, solving quadratics and like factoring, completing the square, quadratic formula is very, very essential for your success. So it's confusing to me why your teacher would not spend a lot of time on that. But the good news and the bad news, let's start with the bad news first. The advice that I'm going to give you is not what you want to hear. It's to practice. Do more examples. A lot of students don't struggle with fractions. Why? Because we don't have a lot of problems that are fractions, right? A lot of problems that we do are with integers, right? It's easy. It's a little bit easier to verify the solution and solve for things and just do the problem, like going through the steps. Once you add fractions, it gets a little bit harder and difficult. So we mix them in there, but we don't do them a lot. That's why a lot of students are not very good at fractions. Word problems. Why do students hate word problems? Because there's usually only 1 or 2 word problems, on a homework or on a test or whatever else. It's not a lot of word problems because we just don't get used to them because they're difficult, right? Students struggle with them. So we want to incorporate them, but we don't do it a lot. And since students don't get a lot of exposure to word problems, they're not very good at them. Well, guess what? On quadratics, the best way to get better at quadratics is to practice quadratics. In pre-calculus, I used to give my students like 120 quadratics to do. And it was not hard quadratics. Like I kept it, I think everything under 12. So maybe it was like 80 problems. I can't remember. But I literally took, I did like when A was 1, and then I also did one. Let's see, I did when A is 1, and then I did all the numbers of 12. So I'm sorry, every single number from 1 to 12 as my C. And I just made up every single combination. So this is just as a repetition, right? I wasn't trying to trick the students and whatever else, but I gave them every single possible quadratic from where the constant could be 1 to 12. And when A was equal to 1, and I think it was like 80 questions. And I'm like, guys, this is not fun to do. You're in pre-calculus. You should already know how to do all these problems. But I'm going to give this to you. And I'm going to tell you this. If you do all of these problems, I am telling you, I am guaranteeing you, you are going to be better. You are going to be more confident in solving quadratics for the rest of this year. And guess what? There's a lot of students that knew how to do it, and they did it, and they're like, that was really boring. But guess what, Ms. McLogan? I feel better, more confident about doing quadratics from doing 30 minutes of like pulling my hair out, bored factoring quadratics. And then there would be students that would struggle with factoring, and we'd do a problem, they would get it wrong, whatever else. And then I'd ask them like, hey, did you do that like 87 question of factoring quadratics? I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm gonna waste my time. And there they are, still struggling. So there's a lot of documents out there that you can get some practice problems with. I'm now in the process of getting some of my documents available on my courses for you guys to go ahead and download and go and practice. But like that 87 problem worksheet. But I'm telling you, it's true. Like if you do it, you're just going to be so much better prepared at solving quadratics. If it's quadratic formula, completing the square, or factoring. Hi. Any tips for preparing to start college next year? Well, that is an exciting thing. I think what the main thing with college that I remember I was scared of was you're going to be involved with a lot more freedom than you're going to be used to. So you're going to have to hold yourself accountable. And a lot of students struggle with that. And it could be that maybe their parents are too strict, or the parents weren't strict enough, or whatever may be the case. And they're open into a new world. And so I didn't have any of that issues because I was determined to show people that I could earn my math degree from my struggling days in high school. So I was like very motivated to do very, very well freshman year. And I made some sacrifices, right? I didn't go to parties when I didn't need to, or, hung out with people when I shouldn't have. I was a pretty good student because I was worried about like dropping out my freshman year. But so I think just having a good understanding of yourself, and you got to have fun in college. I think you got to maximize that experience, because I loved the 4 years that I was in college, met some really, really great people, and, made some lasting memories. So I think you just need to have a conversation with yourself of what you're going to do, how you're going to maximize that, and how you're going to balance out that life. Because I think if you just have a goal, know kind of things that you're going to hold yourself accountable for, and things that you're going to say like, all right, allow yourself to do this, or let's try some new things, let's experience some new experiences and everything like that. Like, it's all a balance, right? You can't sit yourself in your dorm room and just study all day. But if you go out there and just party and don't do your studies, you can't do that all day either, right? So find some things that that how you're going to operate the best as far as studying periods and what you want to achieve. And, I think just kind of having that internal dialogue with yourself can be really, really helpful. And then if things are not going your way, you can kind of revert back, go back to that conversation and things you wrote down and readjust. I am based out of Jacksonville, Florida. Well, you are very welcome. I'm really struggling in trigonometry and pre-calculus, and I struggle where it comes to the point of trigonometric functions and solving them and proofs and identities. Do you have any advice? It's difficult. A lot of times students can be successful in pre-calculus, and then we get to trigonometric identities and proofs, and they kind of go off the rails. And I think a lot of times they go off the rails is because it kind of introduces some topics that is very similar to like geometry. You've probably heard like some students, I'm like, I love algebra and I hate geometry, or I love calculus, I hate geometry, I love trig, I hate geometry, whatever may be the case. What's so difficult about geometry? What's difficult a lot about the geometric, about problems in geometry, is there's not always a step-by-step process that we have to do. Like if you think of like completing the square we've been talking about on this live stream so far, there's like this process. And yeah, you can have different functions, but you basically just apply the same algorithm. Was that what I was trying to say? No, I wasn't trying to say, I don't know. But you apply the same process and you're going to get the result, right? And it kind of gives you some certainty as a student. Whereas geometry, especially like when you go to like geometric proofs or like all these problems, like you're kind of given this, here's your toolkit, and now apply it to how you best see fit. And that can be difficult for students because they're not being told like, do this, then do that, and go from there, right? And a lot of trigonometry, especially like trigonometric proofs, or even get in there, like there's multiple different ways to approach the problem. And that can be confusing for students because they like being told what to do and how to do it. And then we get into like proofs and identities, and there's multiple different ways to approach things. So part of it is just, it's part of the beast, right? You have to learn how to kind of think in that manner, even if that's not your strong suit. So identifying some ways that you can get better at that. One of them is just practicing, a lot more, just getting a little bit more used to being able to adjust of solving a problem, not in a way that's a way that you're always told to, like really kind of reverting back to what you know and what you can apply. And the second thing would just, also maybe getting some advice from somebody else that's either taken the course or that's also taught the course, and just to kind of give you some different pointers of looking at problems. Because I think when you hear somebody explain something that's different than your teacher, sometimes that's all you need just to make things click, right? You're going through it in class, not really making sense, or you're getting frustrated, confused, but then you can have somebody else that's just restating things, maybe in a little bit different way. And that might be all the little boost you need. How often should I practice math to ace it? I'm a university student. Well, to ace it, it's all going to be different, right? Everybody is going to be in a little bit different level, but here's my opinion. You should be doing math every single day. I had an opportunity when I was in college to take a math course that was like once a week, twice a week, or 4 times a week. I always chose 4 times a week. For me personally, it was just better for me to see math every single day. And so that was what I always chose. Now, obviously, I know 4 days a week is not 5 days a week, but trust me, as when I was in university, I was doing math every single day from on there. So, but yeah, I think just the more often you can do the math, the better. So instead of trying to cram for an hour or just spend these big sessions, do 30 minutes or 45 minutes, doing something every single day, in my opinion, is much better than doing it for longer periods, less frequency. Gustavo, you've saved me my life when it came to quadratics and radicals, but when it comes to sequences and series, I'm really struggling. I'm in the mid 80s, but this topic is really kicking my butt. Any suggestions? Yeah, I get it. I do have some videos on sequences and series. I taught it for a couple of years in Algebra 2, so I don't have a ton of content on them like I would with quadratics. But yeah, I think it just comes, getting familiar with it, making sure you really go back to maybe the foundation of understanding some of the essential things with arithmetic and geometric sequences. But yeah, I would just keep on going through the content. I do have a pretty big playlist on sequences and series, so I just maybe recommend checking that out and just like really making sure that you understand the fundamentals, but then also knowing the formulas. Knowing those formulas are crucial from on there. And I think when you kind of realize there's only really a certain set of types of problems that you're really going to be asked. And then once you kind of have those ideas and you know the formulas, it helps you kind of understand how to approach each problem differently. I got a question. You think high school students are capable of higher level math like Calc 3, linear algebra, differential equation, discrete math? I want to teach that stuff to high schoolers. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that is awesome. I think it all just comes into the framework of teaching something in a scope of how people are going to digest the information and understand it, right? So I think there's that one, if you can't explain something like to a 5th grader, like you don't understand it well enough yourself or something like that. I don't even remember the quote. I'm not even going to try to badger it. I already badgered it. I'm not going to try to rephrase it exactly as I thought, but I think you got to understand that. I think the way that I approach things is people are learning is all about connecting things you don't know to connecting things you do know to things you don't know. Right. And we're all going to come into a math course with different experiences and different skill sets that we have collected throughout our time, right? And so yes, there's going to be some students that have a strong foundational math knowledge that you could teach some upper level mathematics and kind of relate things to the math that they are already learning and that they know. But then there's also some really, really interesting concepts in those courses that you can teach that you don't need to actually get into the heavy math part of it that you would maybe expect students to understand, but they could still conceptually understand things. And that's actually one thing that I'm actually on the exact same page with you, because one thing I've always hated is how calculus has been kind of like a gateway course. We kind of if you don't have a strong mathematical foundation, sorry, you can't take calculus. You're not ready for it. And I remember I had such a good experience learning calculus and all that calculus provides to students. And I was like, man, why cannot this be everybody? Everybody has to take calculus. And it's not so much I want everybody to do the math of calculus and all the because for me, that wasn't really what was so important about learning calculus. It was really just about understanding the concepts and how that relates to all the real world and how that relates to all the stuff we've been learning. And I thought it was so important. I'm like, man, could we just yeah, there should still be calculus, which is calculus, true calculus to help prepare you for the good math that you're going to get into beyond calculus. But there should also just be some calculus where we just simplify these concepts for somebody that's not a math nerd or math trained could understand and could apply and could do. I feel like we just do a huge disservice to our students when we only allow certain students to get exposure to certain classes just because they've passed this level of doing some algebraic, operations in their courses. So I am fully on board with your idea. I think there's some great ideas that you can do. Just think about that gateway, that gate stop, from on there, and think about how you can simplify things that, a fifth grader or somebody that's just entering high school could be able to do. Okay. What is that one thing that you're sad about in your life from a long time ago, which sometimes still gets to your mind? I don't know. I guess one thing I would say, like, I knew all of my grandparents before they passed away, but I didn't really know them. And so one thing and they always had like a really, really big impact on my life. So I guess I would say one thing that, always has made me mad is like, I wish I would have had like a bigger relationship when I was like older and could actually like connect with them. That's one thing I always kind of think about. And, I guess kind of makes me sad too. Like, I think they were, great people. And they made a big impact on me from knowing them from when I did. But I wish I also could have experienced them as I was a little bit older and just got to know them on a deeper level in that regard. Because they just knew me when I was like a kid, right? I mean, I was in like middle school and elementary school. So like, I never really got to have like adult conversations with them. And I always just think about that, like, that would have been really, really cool to experience. How do I deal with my math teacher? This is their first year teaching and it sucks to learn because all she does is give notes and then packets. It sucks to learn like this. It's not understandable. I get it. I talked about this earlier in the live stream. It's probably not, you can go back and look where somebody was saying like they struggle with their teacher. I get it. And it's not ideal to have somebody that you're not connecting with and you're not understanding. You're not getting the quality of learning that you need to. But I also want you to understand that you are responsible for your learning and you are the one that you need to hold yourself accountable for it. Your teacher is just there to guide you through the process. So I don't think it's fair that is your only option. I feel like in our day and age, you should have other options to be able to work with another teacher or go online and get another teacher across the country, whatever may be the case. Like, there should be more options to you. And I do apologize that you're kind of feel stuck in your current situation. But the only thing you can do is understand you are the one that's responsible. There is a ton of resources available to you online that you can go ahead and make sure that you are understanding the information. So hold yourself accountable for the information and don't blame it on the teacher, even though they could probably improve. And they are going to improve as they continue teaching, just like all teachers have, do when they first year teaching comparative, but they've been teaching for 5, 10, 15 years. But, get the help that you need. So therefore you can understand it. That could be with study groups. That could be online. That could be with another teacher. That could be the course. That could be with a tutor. Do what you need to do to get by. And guess what? Every year is a different scenario. And next year you might be like, all right, great. Now I don't have this teacher, but then you might have a really, really experienced teacher that you don't connect with at all as well. And you really struggle with them. Right? So like every year there's always going to be something that's not going to be perfect. And then maybe the next year you have the perfect teacher. You love them. They're so great. They make learning so enjoyable. And then the next year after that, you're back to like a first year teacher that you really struggle with or somebody you can't understand. So it's a part of life. It's a part of the process. It's not ideal. I understand that. Just realize you are responsible for what you learn. Use your teacher to help guide you, but don't rely on them to provide you everything that you need to know. Make sure that you're providing the information, you have the syllabus, there's resources available to you. Make sure you get the help you need it, and make sure you learn what you need to learn. I'm super confused on factoring polynomial equations, more specifically the box step of it. My test is on Tuesday. Please help. So, well, I don't have, let me see. I mean, there's a lot. I'm not really sure. Are you talking about like quadratics with the box method? Like when you actually have to factor them out? I need a little bit more context from on there because yeah, sometimes when we're doing the box with quadratics, we find using the AC method, we multiply those two numbers. So you have the first term in the first box, the AC term in the fourth box. And then what you're trying to do is find those other two boxes. And you're doing that by identifying the common factors you could factor out, or the two numbers that multiply to give you your AC, but then add to give you your middle term, and you put them in there. I do have some videos on it. I'd need some more context from you as far as like going over a problem, but I do have a lot of problems on that, but it's mostly with factoring quadratic polynomials, not with higher order ones. I'm struggling to memorize trig identities. I know basic and is struggling to memorize half angle and double angle ones. Any tips? I think just the more you do them, the better. I mean, I didn't make my students memorize those formulas at all. So, but I can tell you as a teacher, or I can tell you right now, I don't have them memorized. I know what they are and I could do them, but I'm telling you, if I probably wrote them down 10 times, I would remember what they were. Right. And as a teacher, that would happen is once I went over that content, it was quick for me to remember them for the next class or the next year and everything else. So my recommendation is just write them down 10 times and that's going to help you remember them. And then also do some problems with them. The more you work with formulas, the easier it is to remember them. Have a second round interview tomorrow for our high school math position. Awesome. Best of luck. Any advice for interviews? Yeah, I just make sure you have some questions for them prepared and go through your responses. We don't want to be like rambling and stumbling and going off there. So I think have some certain questions that you are ready to prepare on and then go through your responses on them. I can't tell you how many times I made a video and I'm like, that video sucked. I was just rambling. I was and I couldn't, like, my brain wasn't clear. I didn't really know what I was like, how to say everything. So sometimes I'd make the video like 3 or 4 times. It'd be like an 8-10 minute video of me just talking, like going off from bullet points and notes. But sometimes like the first time saying it, the second time saying it, I got my point across, but I'm still, it's not smooth. And even though the edit can fix a lot of things, a lot of times just the delivery and how you your confidence just shows as you're speaking through it. So I'd make sure you just have some response, questions that you're kind of prepared on and just go through those responses, multiple times. So therefore, when somebody asks maybe that direct question or something similar to it, you've kind of already rehearsed being able to how you want to reply to those questions and go over those answers. But anyways, best of luck. That's a good one. Yes, I can go back and do that. I'll go back through like weeks for that. That's what I used to do. Mostly just word problems from the same thing. Is it bad I'm spending too much time in math? I stick to questions till I get it, but it takes a lot of free time. Yeah, sometimes it just takes a little bit longer for things to sink in. I get it. And sometimes, there's always students that always took longer taking their test than other students. So I wouldn't say anything like bad from on there. I stick to the question until I get it. But sometimes like when you're taking a test, that could impede you. So, maybe do think about it. And then if it's not something that's immediately coming to you, skip it and then maybe come back to it later. But also another thing that's important is, being able to stay diligent with questions is something very, very important. So I think that's a good trait actually that you have rather than a negative trait. But I would just say like in terms of like taking a test or whatever else, like do the problems you know how to do first that you can approach. And then the ones that are taking a little bit more time or, they're taking longer than they need to, like do some work to get them started and then come back to them. I don't know off the top of my head. There's a lot of things. So if you have a question, go to brianmclogan.com/Q&A, and I'll be happy to try to see if I can help you out. What do you mean? I go live each and every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Again, another old video. Awesome. So I watched some of your old videos for Parabola, and I still struggle with getting it mentally. LOL, I'm studying CIS, but they're having me learn intermediate algebra. Yeah, keep on working at it. I have a lot of videos for that reason. Some videos are going to hit off. Some videos are like homework review. Some videos are like are introductory, and a little bit slower. Awesome. Happy to help. I wasn't like a bad, like rude student, but yeah, I struggle with math. I talked about this last live stream. I got a D in pre-calculus my senior year and just was not a strong student. I didn't really care. And then I decided to get my math degree, and I had to put in a lot of work to overcome some of the math that I was supposed to learn, but didn't. Practice. A little bit of practice here, a lot of practice there, and teaching it over 14 years makes me do a lot of practice, and putting in the effort to practice. Hey, Ms. McLogan, thanks for helping me get through pre-calculus. Do you have any videos, sigma notation, word problems with area under curve? Yeah, go ahead and check out my calculus playlist. I do have quite a bit of videos on there. I'm not sure exactly what you'd be looking for, but I do have a lot of examples in calculus. So, all right, guys, that is it for tonight's live stream. I'm going to end it. Thank you so much for joining in, and I'll see you guys next week. Cheers.